Murray has been amazing and amazingly durable so far. We can talk about that in a minute, I guess. But talk about changing the personality of a football team in 1 year. Linehan claimed that he wanted a balanced offense, claimed that he would run the ball. It was easy to not believe him given his track record, but he's changed this thing. There's no two ways about it.
I don't know if we'll ever know the genesis for the change here. Who actually was the person who pounded their shoe on the table loudest and saying, we're going to run the football? Garrett's history is not that. Linehan's history is not that. The quarterback's history is not that. Bill Callahan, while he's a terrific offensive line coach, has been backed out of the play calling. Who knows? Maybe it was Rod Marinelli who walked in the room and said, I got to have some help here. But, Mike, the interesting thing about this approach to the game is that it's sustainable. Given health for Smith and Frederick and Martin, you can sustain this type of an attack. Even if a Murray were to get hurt, for instance, this is an attack that creates holes. So you would think that over the next several years, if those linemen stay healthy, you can sustain this approach to the game.
And you're going to have what would appear to be a tough decision to make about Murray from a contract standpoint. I've heard you talk about it on the air. The rookie contract is coming to an end. They've already reportedly, started to talk about an extension. You've been held kind of a hard line on this when it comes to Murray and just it being too much of a risk for any back, let alone one with Murray's track record, to commit to him long term just because of the way that running backs tend to go as they approach the age of 30.
The heaviest workload in Cowboy history was Emmitt Smith. He carried it 377 times. 1 year. Once he carried it that many times. DeMarco Murray's on pace for close to 425 carries. Catches and runs, he right now is on a pace to be the second workingest running back in the history of the National Football League in a single season. And you look at the backs who've had enormous workloads over the years, and it is terrible for their future. Absolutely terrible for the future. They're able to sustain it for the year. They have their huge year. But Terrell Davis, Wilder, Ricky Williams, Jamal Anderson, so many go on and on and on. Larry Johnson were a shadow of themselves within a year or two, if even that long. Some of them produce. I think 3 of the 8 that carried it 390 yards or 390 times or more in a season never played a game in their 30s.
Let's talk more with Norm now about this Dallas defense and Rod Marinelli. Maybe the MVP for this team right now, given the magic he's working with this defense.
So many of the players on this team have really improved. Tyron Crawford after the injury last year, J.J. Wilcox, Brandon Carr's having a much, much better year than he had. Carter, though he was hurt today, is better. Durant's been a good player. Rolando McClain has found a second life in the National Football League. Deuce, this is a Seattle team that, while it is not an overpowering team offensively, it's not bad. And in their last 10 possessions today, they drove the ball 64 yards the first time they had the ball. They never drove it more than 39 yards in the last 10 possessions. And 8 of those 10 possessions, they didn't drive it over 14 yards. We can talk all we want about the offense protecting the defense, and to some degree that is happening on this team. But that shouldn't slight the work of the defense, which was superb today.
I think it was one of your callers today that mentioned on your postgame show the fact that this team tackles so much better than it had in the past.
Yeah.
There's something it's not a simple thing to do, but it's a basic football skill that was lacking before and now seems to be more emphasized.
Yeah, it's a defense that I think the sum of these parts is a much greater whole than we expected it to be. And that's, I think, the definition of coaching.
Tony Romo was limping around out there a little bit today. I mean, he didn't look right at times, and I'll be anxious to see what how he feels as the week goes on. He'll have another Wednesday off, I have a feeling. But 21 of 32, 250, made the huge throw to Williams, who somehow hauled that thing in. What do you think of the evolution of Romo as this season goes on?
Romo had a brutal first half against San Francisco. He missed open receivers. He didn't read well. He seemed very slow. He had no escapability. In the last 22 quarters, he's thrown 2 interceptions. If I know you can't go back and take away a half, you take Tony Romo from halftime of the San Francisco game, and numbers-wise, he rates right there with the very best quarterbacks in the National Football League right now, this season. His season is an exceptional season. But every quarterback is helped by 2nd and 5. That's just a fact of life. They're helped by 2nd and 5. The defense remains on its heels because at any time the coaching staff chooses to, they can run for 5 yards.
Romo can still make the special play, as we've seen. Spin out of trouble, throw on the run play. The difference is he doesn't have to make it as often.
I agree.
Have to make it as often.
I agree. So what was the better catch? The better play? The one today, Romo to Williams, or the one Romo to Dez in the Houston game?
I think maybe the one today by just a little bit, because that catch to me was more unbelievable than even Dez's last week. But we're picking nits here. Cowboys now 5-1. Jason Garrett, last year of his deal, we talked about Murray. We heard Jerry Jones sound earlier when he was asked directly, is this when you extend the contract? And Jerry smiled and said, well, I've made too many decisions, but I'm really happy. I'm going to wait on this. But is it possible this win today earned Jason Garrett a few more years with the Cowboys?
I don't think Jerry wants to fire Jason Garrett. I think that's a general opinion of just about everybody who sees this team. He wants this to work. He's found a coach he can work with. There doesn't seem to be much clash of egos at all in this situation. And I just don't know where would Jerry turn if he fired Jason Garrett. It won't happen this week. It won't happen next week. But Jason Garrett's going nowhere. If Jerry wants Jason Garrett to coach the Cowboys, that'll happen.
Norm Hitzges from The Ticket. Always great having you in. Cowboys with 3 straight home games now, starting with the Giants next week. I know you'll be talking about it all week at 10 to noon on Sports Radio 1310 and 96.7 FM The Ticket.
Thanks, Deuce.
Thanks for coming in, my friend.